Today we're going to talk about 8.3, and this is just kind of an introductory lesson to box and whisker plots. So first there's some vocabulary words that I want you to learn before we get started for our lesson today. So go ahead and pull out your red pen, and if you would, write this into your notes at the top of your page. This is a way to organize data from a data set. One thing that you have to know, we kind of talked about this yesterday too, is you always have to put the numbers in order from least to greatest. So there's the first thing called the lower extreme. Guys, what is the lower extreme? It's the lowest number, okay? Then you've got something called the lower quartile. Everyone say quartile. Quartile. All right, so that's the median of the lower half of the data. The median, which we talked about yesterday, it's that middle value or the middle number. The upper quartile is the medium of the upper half of the data, and the upper extreme is the what? Highest number, okay? So when doing a box and whisker plot, after you find what these 5 things are, then you're going to make a number line. So this probably doesn't make any sense. I'm going to go ahead and do the first example, and then hopefully it will make a little bit more sense to us, okay? So let's look at the first one. We're going to make a box and whisker plot of the data, but looking at this right here, are my numbers in order from least to greatest?
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are. All right, so looking at all of this, the LE, what does that stand for? Lower extreme. What is the lower extreme? The lowest number. What is our lowest number? 35. So we're going to go ahead and just write that there. That's a 35. Okay, now there's something that's opposite of the lower extreme. It's the upper extreme. What is the upper extreme? Okay, it's 100 because it's the highest number. So we're going to go ahead and do that one next. All right, now we're going to go to the median. That's the middle value. Looking at all of that, how many numbers do I have in my data set? 10. So is there a number directly in the middle?
Yes. No.
There is not. There's 2 numbers in the middle because I have an even number of numbers in my data set. What are the 2 numbers in the middle? 60 and 70. Just go ahead and underline that for me. All right, so what I'm trying to do here now is I want to organize my data by the upper half of the data and the lower half of the data. So I want you just to go ahead and draw a line here because that's showing us that is right there in between the middle of all that data. All right, so now if I wanted one middle value, I don't want it to be 60 and 70. What number would come in the middle of 60 and 70?
65.
65. So my median is going to be 65, okay? We can hopefully easily see that because we know the number in the middle of 60 and 70 is 65. But if you did not know that, you would just find the mean of those 2 numbers. So I would add 60 and 70 and then divide by 2 because there's 2 numbers in the data set, all right? So then that's going to be 130 divided by 2, which equals 65. You do not have to show me all of that work unless you just want to, okay? Now the next thing is we're going to try to find the lower quartile. If you look at the left half of my data, there are 5 numbers there. Read to me, what is the lower quartile? What does the lower quartile mean? What is it, guys?
Median lower half.
All right, so what's the median of the lower half of that data?
45, 42, 42.5.
I only want the median. That's the middle number of that. What is it, Nehemiah? 42.5. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and write that down. That's because that is directly in the middle of the lower half of the data. So looking at the upper half of the data, because my upper quartile is the median of the upper half, what is my upper quartile? 78. Go ahead and circle it, and then let's write that down. All right, so whenever you're doing a box and whisker plot, you have to find what these 5 things are. Now we're going to make a number line, and we're going to plot these points. We are only going to plot these 5 points. Not all 10 in our original problem, but just 5 of them. So let's go ahead and draw a number line. All right, so you can see I'm going from the numbers 35 up to the number 100. Whenever making a number line, you've got to make it in increments that are all exactly even. So I'm going to go ahead and start at a nice rounded number. We're going to start at a 30. You do not always have to start at a 0. Okay, for me, I'm choosing a 30. What number do you think I need to go up to? 100, because my biggest number, you can see the upper extreme, is going to be 100. So I'm going to get all the way over there to 100. And how much do you think I should count by in between to get from a 30 to 100? 10. I think that's a great number, okay? So we're going to go ahead and put these points in here and count by tens. Once again, you must have an even number of increments when making a number line. All right, so now as I said this before, we are only going to plot the 5 points that we found here. What was the lowest point that we found, the lower extreme? 35. So we're going to go ahead and put a dot where the 35 would be. It's going to be in between the 30 and the 40, and then I'm going to label that that represents 35. Next up, we're going to do the lower quartile. What number is my lower quartile? 42.5. So I'm going to put a dot about where I think 42.5 would be. It's okay if it's not absolutely perfect, but you want it to be about there, and then go ahead and label it so we know exactly what number you wanted it to be. Harmony, what's my median? 65. So we're going to go ahead and put a dot and label it 65. William, what's the upper quartile? 78. So that's going to be just before the 80. And Javaria, what's the last one I need to plot? 100. Okay, so once again, notice we are only plotting those 5 points that we came up with that information, not all 10 of our points that we had in the original problem. Now what you want to do is you want to draw a line straight up and down through your median. Okay, remember that median is the middle value. So we're just doing a little line right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and draw a line through my lower quartile and my upper quartile. And those 3 things right there are going to help me form the box for the box and whisker plot. So we're going to go ahead and box it in. Okay, so now with the box and whisker plot, we haven't drawn any whiskers. The whiskers are the 2 lines that are going to come off, kind of like a cat has whiskers coming off. They're the lines that are going to go to connect the lower extreme and the upper extreme. So all I'm going to do is just go ahead and draw a line there to connect it to my box. All right, and that is how you make a box and whisker plot. Now there's something that's very important that I want you to know that I wrote down here at the bottom. Each one of these whiskers represents 25% of my data. So you can see right here, this is 25%. And this other whisker over here is also 25%. How much does my box represent? 50%. Does that make sense? Because technically, if this is 25 and this is 25, this whole total right here is what? 45. That's going to be 50%. So this box right here, from that point to this point, that is 50% of my data. So this is just a way that we can display data to understand how many different data points we have. And that's why we do a box and whisker plot. Let's look at example 2. This one is a little bit different. I want you to tell me about those original problem numbers. Are they looking like I want them to look? No. What do I need to do to them? Okay, let's go ahead and put them in order from least to greatest. All right, so as I put them in order from least to greatest, what's the smallest number, guys? 7.5. Just go ahead and do that directly underneath that first number and cross out the 7.5. What's the next one? 10. And then let's cross it out. How about the next one? 12. And then what's next? 15.5. Next one? 20.5. Next one? 22. And the last one? 25. Very good. Okay, so just remember, always put your information in order from least to greatest. Nikki, what's my lower extreme?
10. No. Yes.
What's the lowest number we just had in our data set? 7.5. Okay, I want you and your partner to go ahead and do the rest of them together. All right, let's see what we came up with, guys. What's the lower quartile? 10 is going to be my lower quartile. Okay, what's the median? 15.5, because that's that number right there in the center. What's the upper quartile? 22, and the upper extreme? 25.5. Okay, let's talk about this information down here at the bottom. The whiskers. How much is each whisker worth of the data? 25%. And how about that box?
50.
The box is holding 50% of my data. So now we're going to go ahead. Remember, you can always circle the median, and then that can help you to understand the lower half of the data and the upper half of the data. Okay, so now that we have those 5 things, we're going to plot those 5 points on our number line. Looking at this number line, what number do you think I should start with down at the bottom? 5. I think 5 is a great one, okay? 7.5 is not a nice rounded number, so let's start with something like a 5. What would I need to go up to?
30.
Probably a 30, okay, because I don't want to stop at 25 because I've got a number in my data set that's bigger than a 25. So let's go ahead and start with a 5 and go all the way up to a 30, okay? Once again, you want to count by even increments. So for me, I'm counting by 5s. All right, Taylor, what's the first point I'm going to plot?
7.5.
7.5. Good job. That's directly in between a 5 and a 10. Madison, what's my next one? Good job. We're going to do lower quartile, which is a 10. Sierra, next one.
12.
Now remember, you only have to plot the 5 points.
Oh, yeah. 15.5.
15.5. That's my, sorry, my median, 15.5. Hunter, what's next?
22.
22. That's my upper quartile. And the final one, girls, what is it? 25.5. All right, Brody, what line should I draw through at the very beginning?
The lowest, or like,
We're going to go for the median. What's my median?
15.5.
All right, so go ahead and draw a line through the median. Now we're going to draw the lines through the lower quartile and the upper quartile. And what do those things right there create? Our box. Okay, so go ahead and draw your box around that. Alexis, what do I have to do next?
You have to connect,
What are those parts of it called? The whiskers. We've got to make our whiskers, which go out to the lower extreme and the upper extreme. All right, now they call it a box and whisker plot, I'm guessing, because it can look a little bit like a cat. All right, so that is how you make a box and whisker plot. You don't need to draw the cat, though. All right, as I looked at your think, pair, share, a lot of you did a really great job. So we have to put them in order from least to greatest. Here's where some people got tricked up. Because there were 2 6s, don't let that influence you to get messed up, okay? How many total numbers do I have in my data set?
7.
There are 7, okay? So this one is directly in the middle, okay? My smallest number, lower extreme, was?
2.
Next up, what was the upper extreme?
10.
10. We already know the middle number was 6. Now, looking at this lower half of the data, what number is in the middle?
3.
3. So that's my lower quartile. Looking at the upper half, what's in the middle?
8.
8. So the 8 goes right there. What did you guys do for numbers? What did you start at?
I did 0 to 10. 2.
Okay.
1 to 10.
Listen, a lot of people started at different points, and that's okay. All right? You just got to find something that's even. So if you started at 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, then you're going to know, okay, the first point I want to plot is a 2. Next one is a 3. Make sure you're labeling these numbers underneath. Next one is?
6.
Next one?
8.
And the final one?
10.
All right, very good. Okay, remember you only want to label just those points. So I put a line through the median, the upper and lower quartiles, and then we draw our box. Okay, what comes off the box?
A line.
A whisker. Okay, the whiskers represent how much of the data? 25%, and the box represents how much? 50%. Very good. Okay, so that is the idea of box and whisker plots. We are going to use that tomorrow in our lesson because it kind of expects you to already know that. Tonight, I am not giving you any homework.